Welcome to The Verdict. Tom Feher is an award-winning trial lawyer who knows there is more to our stories than what you see on the surface. He has built his law firm, Feher Law, into one of the top injury and employment trial firms representing people in California. Join us each week as Tom explores the successes, challenges, and lessons learned from some incredible people. Hit subscribe, follow Feher Law on Facebook and Instagram, and let's get to the verdict. And now, here is your host, Tom Feher.
Welcome, everybody. We've got our guest, Steve Vartazarian, today. He has one of the best, if not the best, if you've eaten there, sushi restaurants in Los Angeles. Steve, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. All things considered, pretty good.
Good. It's great to have you on the podcast. I noticed, you're from Los Angeles, you're from the San Fernando Valley, but somehow you ended up going to Oklahoma City University for college. And I thought before we get into the food and maybe the meat of things, you could tell us, how is it that a guy growing up in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles ends up all the way out in Oklahoma City University?
That's a really long story, actually. I didn't know you were going to ask me that. No, I wasn't always an academic, responsible, college going, do what you're supposed to do kind of kid. I had my own visions and I had my own thoughts, and I never listened to anyone, my parents, other adults, and I always did my own thing all the time. Even now, I don't listen. However, there is some advice that you get when you're a kid that you reach a fork in the road where you get to choose the outcome of your life and how you're going to live it. It just, a lot of people come up to that fork and you can go one way or the other. And so for me, one of the things that I was able to it occurred to me that a lot of this advice that you get from your elders, be it parents, other people that you know, relatives, whatever, it comes from a place of love. And once, as a teenager, or even in your very early 20s, you become emotionally intelligent enough to understand that, these people are loving on you, man. Like, they're not trying to control your life or tell you what time to come home or what to do, what not to do, and this and that. They actually want a good future for you. And I found that oftentimes, even back in my youth, I never listened, and I never knew why. Like, I was like, why am I just, one day, it's a long story. I'll keep it short, but I got into it with my dad, and I was working at his factory at a small place in Sun Valley. And 3 days I had stayed home, and my mom came into my room in the morning. It was a Thursday, and she said, "If you're not at work by 10 a.m., when we come back, I don't want you here." And a lot of other choice words. And so it was around 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And she left, and something happened. I reached that fork in the road, and it occurred to me, I have to either live my life responsibly. I felt guilty that my parents, immigrants, did all the things that they needed to do for me. I never took advantage of it, did poorly in school, and ended up working in a factory, or I gotta do something with my life. So I decided I want to do something with my life. And I got in my car, packed up all my stuff, and I just drove for like 10 days. I drove all the way up to Washington. This is in 1995, 96-ish. I was about 20. I had 3 years. I went to Pierce College here, dropped out. And I drove all the way up to Washington, down through Nevada, into Utah. And I went into New Mexico, Santa Fe, ended up in Dallas. And it was a summer night, and I was driving up towards Oklahoma. I was going to go to the East Coast. And it was just something really beautiful about the drive. And I had over a week to think about my life. And I'm like, I got to go to school. That's one thing that everyone, whether they had anything in common or not, that was the one thing that rang clear with everyone's advice. Education will put your foot in the door. And they were right. And when that occurred to me, I made the choice to make a commitment. My commitment was, the next town that I stop in, I'm going to find a college. I'm going to get serious. I'm going to study, and something that I've never done. And I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to do well on these tests. And my parents were worried sick that I hadn't, called them. They were worried sick about me. And so I got there. It was, I can't remember, it was like a Monday or Tuesday. I went into Motel 6, rented a small room, and bought a map, went to visit some of the local schools. I went to Rose State Community College. I'll never forget. And I met the most wonderful counselor there. And she sat me down and I told her my life and what I want to do. And we figured it all out. We called my mom. I signed up. My mom was so happy. She flew out here. Well, at that time in Oklahoma, she flew out to Oklahoma from here, co-signed for my apartment, and I crushed it. I took it very seriously. I had a great time. As you know, I like to have fun. It's part of life. I've never taken it too seriously. I love to have fun. And so, I did that on Friday night. Saturday, I'd go out. But the rest of the week, I took it seriously. I finished it. I went to Oklahoma City University, which is the top business school there. And the day that I graduated, some 3.5 years later, I took summer school, that. I did everything to get out a little early. My dad flew out to my graduation in Oklahoma, and he got to sit next to the dean of the business school. And he told him, he goes, "Are you sure?" He still didn't believe that I was able to make it. In fact, my dean came up to me a couple days later as I was packing up my things from the business school to leave and stuff. I had some stuff in the classroom and stuff. He said, "I'm very proud of you. I was in the student body. I was doing all these things, and a lot of our exams were oral. So we talk about the economy and this, that." So he knew I knew my stuff. And he's like, "Your dad asked if I ever caught you cheating or being absent." And, he still didn't believe. He's like, "What did you do as a kid?" I'll leave that at that. But I wasn't the worst, but I wasn't the best. I mean, I never hurt anyone or did anything wrong. I just, just blowing it, everything off. But that's the story, man. It was just happenstance, changed my life. I made a commitment and I needed to get the hell out of here. The Valley in LA was not productive for me. It was holding me back. And sometimes you got to get out of your environment. I mean, you look at meditation. I mean, you can do that for 10 minutes, or you could do it for 3 years or 4 years. I went to San Diego for law school after that because my friends, the things, just the environment was not conducive for me to progress. And long story short, I ended up becoming a lawyer. I went to Thomas Jefferson School of Law. I got really good grades in undergrad. My LSAT, not so much. I'm not good at taking standardized tests. I applied to almost every law school, not in America, but top 20, top 30, or whatever it is. So many applications went out, and I didn't get accepted to any of them, except one. And it was my fallback. Somebody told me, just do it, just in case. I'm like, no, I can go to Buffalo, or I can go to Pittsburgh, or I can go to, Miami, and all these different, they're like, just in case. Because I can't remember what the score was, but it was crap. I mean, I studied, I took Kaplan, I did all these things, and, I bombed it. And so every time. So I got into Thomas Jefferson School of Law. They let me in. I never replied. In the third week in August, they started right after Labor Day. I got a call. They're like, "You never responded to your acceptance letter." I'm like, "Yeah, because I don't want to go to law school there." I wanted to go to some, I didn't want to go to this third tier, no one ever heard of school that was barely just got accredited. In fact, 2 years ago, they took away their accreditation because their bar passage rates were so low. So that's the kind of school, but it was great. I mean, I went there, they're like, "Just come down and check it out." I was like, fine. I didn't know what else I was going to do with my life. I was back in LA. I definitely was not done with education. And so I drove down there. And the teachers and everyone, again, so nice. I mean, I've been blessed in my life to have the best experiences and the best people that were very supportive. They believed in me. So many people believed in me. And, it's less than 7, 8 people that they just always believed in me. And the counselor there and my teachers, they saw something, man. They're like, "This is going to be good for you." And they were right. And that's the long and the short of it.
You brought up something really interesting in talking about your journey to Oklahoma City, and you mentioned how you sort of you sort of march to your own beat. I mean, you're the type of person that doesn't necessarily follow a lot of the conventional things. And, you're not really finding a place to fit in. And then some kid from the Valley ends up in the middle of the country in Oklahoma City, and you apply yourself and you commit to it. And you do something that even when you completed it, even when you finished it successfully, your father didn't even believe that you had done it. And that's the level of commitment that you applied then. And is it also the level of commitment that you apply now to the various things that you're doing?
My first verdict was $3,200. It was my first verdict in my own firm, which I started with my wife in 2010. It was below the small claims limit. So they filed a motion to make me pay for their attorney's fees. And I don't even know what it was, So I started trying cases very early. And the answer coming back, answering your question and making it germane, I always do what I think is right. I don't listen to any mediator. I don't listen to anyone, my elders anymore. I always do what I think is right. And I don't let anyone influence the way that I think or the decisions that I make. I look at something. Look, life is about your ability to perceive and evaluate, and you better be right. If you are, you can have a tremendous amount of success. If you're wrong, it's okay, as long as you pick yourself up, learn from your mistakes, and are willing to be courageous and take a chance on yourself again. And I did that over and over and over again until I found that sweet spot in litigation where I know I'm in a place now where I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen in a trial or with a case. So I'm very careful. If you see, we win all these cases in a row, it's not because I'm some great lawyer. I could take a good case and make it great, but I cannot take a bad case and make it great. And so, we get a lot of referrals, both of us, Tom, and changing gears for a moment, just to say, these referring attorneys, they have tremendous expectations. I hear things like, I want you to wow me. Well, I'm not here to wow you. I'm here to save your ass because you don't know what to do, stuff like that. So yes, I still carry with me the same courage, the same confidence, and I call my own shots. I don't really mediate. Everyone knows that about me. I don't need a mediator to tell me, what to do. And if the defense wants to bring their adjuster there for the mediator to talk to him or her, I'm not going to be there for that. Sometimes I tell them, go on your own. So yeah, I still call my own shots and do my own thing. For sure.
I think it's important. I think that's important to be able to tune out the noise and to be confident in your own ability and your ability to sort of assess, analyze, and do things, whether that's in the law, whether that's in life, especially if it's a business venture, whatever it is that you're doing, to be able to hear it and then also know and be true to yourself, which is what you're doing in your practice. And that's how you started as an attorney, obviously, from going to Oklahoma City University, then to Thomas Jefferson, then practicing law, and eventually opening up your own firm. And you've done a great job, a remarkable job, very successful with your firm. But unlike so many other people in the industry, you've gone on to do so many other things. And, we started with you having one of the top sushi restaurants in Los Angeles, and it's been acclaimed by various publications as being one of the can't miss spots to go and try. How is it that an attorney, right, somebody that went to law school, ends up, starting to dip his feet into the food industry and getting involved in that area?
Again, my stories are long, how those things go down, but I can sum it up for you. Success to me is not all financial. People look at success as, oh, I have a lot of money in the bank. Well, I could tell you right now, that is not. I always thought that was the case. And then I had that, and I looked at my life, and I was like, oh shit, my wife hates me sometimes. I don't see my kids. this is not. And then I realized, I was like, oh man, like I missed the boat on a lot of things. And so I tried to define what success really is. And I came up, in my mind, I sat for days. I remember it was over a long holiday weekend. And it comes down to three things in no particular order. Health is 1/3. Money, which is your job, this, that, is another third. And family, happiness, and the pursuit of your dreams is the other third. Happiness. And I found that I took the money one and I assigned 80% of value to it. And by default, the remaining health, which I didn't exercise, I was going out a lot, socializing with, referring attorneys, my friends and stuff. And
Sure.
And the family one happened to be like 5%. The other one, 10%. I'd do a Peloton here and there, but I realized that I put all my eggs in the wrong baskets. And when I realized that, it occurred to me that you don't have to only focus on making money to make money and be successful, if that's your definition of it. Happiness is a inside job, so to speak. It happens behind the walls of your home.
I love that, by the way.
Inside of your house. That's where it starts. It's not what you do out in public. It's not what you do in the courtroom. It's an inside job. And so I sat down and I completely reevaluated my life. And I realized that there's a lot of things about my childhood. I was raised in a very tough Middle Eastern environment. My mom was very loving. She was the safe space for me. My dad was hardcore, man.
That's kind of how my dad was. I'm Eastern European, so it's very old school, old generation, tough on you kind of way.
Yeah, I never got anyway. Consider, I went to college, I graduated, which was what he always wanted me to do. God came to Oklahoma, didn't believe it. Had to ask the dean, make sure I'm not full of shit. That's kind of where we were at. And it was tough growing up, man. It was tough. Very critical of me all the time. And I was just trying to be me and just figure out who I am and what I like in life. And, I got a lot of crap for that. And it was pretty intense. In any event, so I examined what I knew and I realized that I have a lot of work to do. And a lot of that has to do with processing my traumas, my past, and figuring out why I am the way that I am. And it was hard for me to love unconditionally. It was hard for me. I was very armored up and everything was about, money, this, that, this, that. So I spent at that time, we were in 2016, 17, and I just hit a few verdicts in a row that were a first impression, bellwether, right product, right medical, hip liability case, and a few others like it. I don't remember now, but and so I had some time to stay at home. It was the first time I made some real money. As you know, I bought my Encino house. You were one of the first people in 2014 I invited. Anyway, so I realized that success is the pursuit of your dreams and making sure that you have these three things: health, lovely relationship with your wife, your mom and dad, if they're still around, your siblings, your children. That's another 33. And then the other third is going to work, certainly. The work thing we had covered. So I had to dial that back so I could make room to give to the other parts of my life. I started working out every morning, meditating, yoga, hitting the gym. But more importantly, I started being much more kinder, and more loving and more understanding and patient with my wife and my kids. And when I did that, everything kind of coalesced. And then I realized in my youth, I always thought, life, you got to be 100% happy all of the time. That's success. So if you look at the formula that I had, these three things, it's a third, a third, a third. And then I realized, I was like, even at my best, when I'm trying, I could only reach 25% of that third in each. Some days I don't go to the gym. Some days I don't, I may not, I want to settle a case for X. It comes in for Y, whatever. Okay. Some days, I'm not there at home when I should be, and X, Y, Z, you get the rest.
Yeah.
And so I realized that life is perfect when you can have 75% of these things and leave 25% of room for crap. It's normal. It's normal. And so that is my barometer on where I'm at. Once I start dipping below 75%, I know that there's something wrong. So I take the time, I step back and I fix it. I fix it. If I need to spend time here, shut down, work on something, for a week, I've been known to do that where I won't leave my conference room here. And, so that's that. Now, to answer your question, I went off on a tangent, but to give you context.
Well, it just sounds like, the context that you're giving us is this is you time. This is for you, what we're getting into. So, maybe you called it crap, or it's this other time, but it sounds like this is going to be what's really in you that you need to get out, that you need to express. I'm just maybe a little foreshadowing there with the context you gave.
Yeah. So, I want you to know. So one of my dreams was always to own a restaurant. I equated that with success. I'm like, I always want a restaurant. Well, you're not a chef. You're not, everyone told me, you don't know anything about restaurants. You don't know this, or they're too risky. They always fail, especially in LA. It's not for you. It's not for you.
More of that noise, right? More of that noise, and people that are, we all know, we say haters, or, people that say you can't do something. And
no, haters are the people who say it after you succeed.
Gotcha.
Like, it's not going to work. These people actually, they cared. They meant they were trying to give me good advice, that what they thought. And then the adage that I described when we first got on is, I turn back, I'm like, wait a minute, why would I listen to you? Maybe you can't do it, but I know that I can. I know that why wouldn't I be able to? If I can, for 20 years, I was trying to win Trial Lawyer of the Year. That's the only thing. That's why I got into this mess where I had to sit down and reconfigure my life. It's the only thing that ever meant anything to me. And so I was like, if I can do that, then this is going to be a breeze. This is going to be like this. But it wasn't. It was actually, it's very, very difficult. So the way that I got into it is I really liked sushi. I mean, it's an experience. You sit at the bar. I started eating sushi in 1990. And the first time, it just blew me away. I got a salmon, a piece of yellowtail, an albacore belly, a piece of tuna, and some other, freshwater eel. And my first sushi experience was on Tampa and Nordhoff at a restaurant there. I don't know if it's still there, called Musashi. I think it moved, but this was in 1990. And my uncle took me, and it was the best experience that I ever had. Adding beer and some sake to it, I was like, okay, you know what? I love this. I love this. You're sitting at the bar, there's people next to you, they're happy, it's Friday, the chef's talking, there's music playing, there's flavors I've never tasted, there's sauces, there's dressings, there's, accoutrements, there's all these, my senses were overwhelmed. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen visually, taste-wise. I'm like, I'm done. I feel like I'm in the sushi chef.
I feel like I'm in the sushi version of Ratatouille with you describing that.
Oh man, it was so good, Tom. And so I went again and again and again and again, and I had never picked up the tab because my uncle would take me, or I'd go with my parents or family or this or that. And then about 2-3 months later, I went to there's a sushi bar that my buddy worked in on Sunset. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, Hana Sushi. I remember that. And so it was on Wilshire, actually. And so I went there, and I went with a buddy, and we got the bill, and it was $260. And I was like, I had no idea. I never paid attention to the prices. And so I learned, I was like, shit, man, you got to calm down with this. Thankfully, a few years later, I went to Oklahoma, where there isn't really anything. So I learned that it was expensive, and I learned why. If you want good stuff, you're going to have to pay for it. So over the course of the next 25 years, I went as much as I could, and we couldn't afford it back, when I'm in college, and even when I started working as an attorney. I mean, we were making, back then, they would start you at 50, maybe. And then you get, at least where I was able to get my foot in the door. And so
different times now.
Different now, yeah. It's if you don't get $130,000, there's something wrong, which I don't know. That's great for those. We have a lot of associates here, that's what they want, and you have to pay them. I'm like, yeah, okay. But it was a different time back then. And I mean, again, we're talking 15, 17 years ago.
Sure.
So I developed a love for it. And as I started making money and doing better, I kept going to the same restaurant, Asanebo in Studio City. Everyone knows it.
I know that. I know that they had a Michelin star.
And my wife and I, we were ornaments at that counter at the bar there, like 2, 3. They had a plaque with my name on it. I would text, I'm coming. They would take it, put it on the bar, and there's like 40 people outside waiting, and I'd get first dibs. I spent all of my money there in the beginning, and we loved it. It was a block away from my house. It was fantastic. I made friends with a very young chef at that time, Mark Akuda. And Mark, he was a visionary. I mean, he grew up, in North Hollywood on Lancashire. Very, very, just his background. He started as a busboy, very humble beginnings, man. I mean, he lived, it was not anything extravagant by any means. He started as a busboy. I mean, this guy really, really paid his dues. And so we became really good friends. And he'd come over to my house and we'd spend some time together. And, he was a visionary. He wanted his own bar. And so one day he calls me out of the blue and he goes, Brothers Sushi in Woodland Hills is for sale. What's up? I'm like, what's up? I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I got to do this. Do you want to be involved? Can you tell me, how can I do this? And so I remembered Brothers Sushi because I didn't get kicked out, but in 91 or 2 or something like this, I did a semester at Pierce. I went there with some friends and, we're sitting in the back in those days, people are smoking cigarettes and it was, and I ordered some rolls and stuff. And my portion of the bill was $28, but I only had $12. My mom worked at Broadway in Topanga Mall. I had to call her from the restaurant. Everyone left. She had to come get me and pay, it was like this whole thing. So I remembered that. I never forgot that. It was so embarrassing, I was with some, college friends and stuff. And anyway, I was like, I remember that one memory. I'm like, just without even talking to my wife, I'm like, yes. I'm like, let's do it. Let's do it. So then I called her and I told her, and, she's always been very supportive of everything that I've done, always. And, and we sat down, we talked, we figured it out. And 2 days later, I bought it. And
that's incredible. I mean, from going to the place you couldn't even afford at one point, right? Your mom had to bail you out with the $28 check to here you've come full circle and now you've got an opportunity to buy this place.
Yeah, I went there. I brought a check with me. I haven't told anyone this story, but we brought a check, and the guy who owned it with his wife, his name is Goro-san. He had been there since 79, and the restaurant it was dilapidated. The bathrooms did not have vents for the toilets, for all the gas and stuff like that, natural gases and stuff. You have to vent that. Those weren't they weren't there. It's dangerous. It was right next to the kitchen. It was, and I learned it. They told me that, and so I walked around the place. It was a mess. However, he started shutting down at lunch because his knees could not take it to stand from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then again from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. So once he shut down for lunch, the restaurant went under because the nighttime could not sustain it. And so we reached a deal right there. I wrote him a check. He gave me the keys, and we transferred the alcohol license, and it was a done deal. They were out. And as soon as that happened, this was early 2018. And so something like that. Yeah, it was because I know we opened in October of 2018. So this was in late 2017, early 2018. And I came in and I do what I usually do. I tore the whole place down and I built it back up again inside. I redid the kitchen. I redid everything except for the front. And for everyone who's been there, I kept the front, the 1979, the same front that it was on the day that my mom picked me up. And if you go to Brothers Sushi, you will see that the entire restaurant is brand new, except for the outside. And the reason for that is to remind me of where I came from every time I go there, to keep me humble and to know that at any point in time, you're always human and you could always, come back to that. It's possible you do a couple wrong things here and there. It's a humbling experience pulling up, because I remember that day and I remember what happened. And I'm so proud of myself, so I don't like to say that, but when I walk in, I mean, I'm so proud of myself, but the walk from the parking lot to the inside of the restaurant, that's a tough one for me, because I remember that time. And I specifically kept it like that, like I'm saying, so that it would bother me. It would remind me, I did it on purpose. Everyone's like, oh my God, you didn't do it. Like, yeah, of course. I could have tore the whole front down, made nice, smooth concrete, like Brothers Santa Monica that we're opening now. It's beautiful, every single thing. But this one, that's why the outside is the original outside. It was there in the 80s. It was there in the 90s. That's how I remember it. And so that's why that's there.
I mean, that's incredible, the depth to that story and to just what that place symbolizes in your life, and how that exterior is symbolic of something I think is so important for all of us to keep in mind, that at any moment, this can be gone, whatever success we've had or have done. And that's why it's so important to just be mindful of all of this, grateful, and to always, sort of keep going and coming up with new ideas and reinventing ourselves. I mean, and as you mentioned, you've got another location opening up in Santa Monica.
You can never stop being careful, so now people are like, oh yeah, oh, congratulations. Like I'm like, wait a minute. Congratulate me when I retire and I leave with my reputation intact, with my trust account, never at issue with, because it's like, I know that I say that I would never, but when I see that, I'm going to keep myself careful until the day that I'm gone. And then when I'm gone, come and congratulate me. But until then, like, look at what happens in this life, man. That's why I have little reminders to keep me humble. And that's just one story about the outside of Brothers. I have a lot of things like that, because that shit can get away from you. And look what can happen after one of the most successful careers ever. This is how somebody goes out. Like, F that. I'm not going out like that. I'm not doing that. That's insane. And so, you got to be very careful. You got to be very careful. And so that's kind of my motto. Every morning I wake up, I'm like, okay, you're starting all over again. Don't, I'll say this, and then I'll talk about this restaurant and why I did it. When you start getting into these 8-digit cases, and you start forget settling them, like, that happens. But when you start hitting these verdicts and you start getting into, they start paying out, it changes your life. I mean, it really changes your life. I mean, you get a 7-8-digit payday. I mean, it's a different thing from when I started, we had like $3-4 grand in 2009, it's a completely different thing. And so I found myself, Tom, slipping just a little bit, because especially during COVID, there wasn't much pressure, but I started doing things where I started relying on my talents a little bit more than I ever have. Typically, I'm extremely well prepared. I'm extremely well researched and this and that. And so I was like, I cut a couple corners, which was fine. I mean, I was doing 4 things at once, but I didn't, and everything worked out and nothing, it was great. But I found myself relying a little bit more on my talents than old school grit that got me here. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's how it starts. That's how it starts. You get a little bit of an ego, and now all of a sudden, you're doing this and you're taking an expert depot without, this and that. And I was like, yeah, I'm never going to do that again. And obviously I did a fantastic job of cases, all the cases I was working on that month. We concluded them successfully, but you got to be humble, and you got to be very careful. And even in the restaurant game that I'm assuming that I'm making space in case it doesn't work or we need to carry it for longer. But in any event, so Brothers Woodland Hills worked out. I always wanted a restaurant on the West Side. So did my wife. My wife's like, open a restaurant in Santa Monica. I was like, okay. And it was like, even in Woodland Hills, a lot of people ask me, they're like, what's up with that patio? There's a patio in the back. I built the patio so I could take my wife to dinner during COVID. That was the reason. That's the reason why it's there. Like, that's why she's like, oh, we could go sit outside, this, that. I'm like, I got you, baby. I got you. Don't worry. So I built it in April of 2019. I mean, I didn't have much to do anyway, so it was a nice project, but that's how that happened. And that's the story behind that. And it turned out to be something that changed the dynamic of sushi in LA, because it was the only outdoor spot for sushi in I don't know how many miles, like in a long distance. So everyone from Beverly Hills, we had people from Orange County coming,
I was going to say, there's from my just memory, being a Los Angeles native, I don't recall there ever being a sushi place where you can go and eat outdoors. And here you've got this, and the pandemic is, just hurting a lot of different restaurants because they either have to shut down, they can't afford the kitchen, the servers in the kitchen, the cooks. And here you're able to actually stay open and not only survive, but actually thrive.
There's something to be said about that. There's a reason for that. It's not an accident. And so in my observation and what I've seen in this industry, what you're describing is something that is a phenomenon, like I alluded to, where restaurants fail. If they don't fail, their profit margins are very low, and they don't survive COVID and this and that. And so, the reason for that, it comes down to talent, in my estimation, that I've seen these chefs, and attention to detail. So the restaurant industry is like this extremely amorphous concept. You're dealing with customers' personalities, similar to this. Now, this analogy is going to be drawn to jury trials. You're dealing with different personalities and different appetites and different character traits. And some people are angry, some people drink, some people are, all these different things. And they're coming and they're spending a lot of money on raw fish on top of that. And so they're coming like super critical. Well, that's what the restaurant business is in many regards. And so a lot of people that try to cater to that, they fall short. They fall short because they don't understand how to cater to all these people, and how to be, how to host them, how to bring them in, and how to show them the best time ever. The details, like I said, the sauces, the seating, the chopsticks, the this, the that. The litigation is the same way, in a sense. So what we do is, I look at my chefs and they have the talent, they have more. And like you and I, when it comes to the cases, we have more than what it takes to address what's in front of us. And that's how we stayed open during COVID. It didn't even, in fact, we flourished during COVID. And that's how, we win cases when other people don't. We have more than what it takes to deal with what's in front of us. And so the discrepancy between what's needed and what is, in some chefs that I've seen, or even some attorneys, that shortcoming, not paying attention to the details, not reading the depositions, not considering, their expert's opinion, not doing this, we consider everything. And so that's why, be it in law, be it in, I hope this stays true again. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But I will say, up to this point, that's why we've been able to go, my office was, it wasn't even like my conference room here. We had a small office, and we went from there to, we got a pretty nice space here in Calabasas, and Brothers was, just one small sushi bar. We turned it into this big thing. Now we got 2 locations, maybe a third coming in Pasadena next year, and, we have Shibuya across the street now. And so these are the reasons, we really just pay attention and care about what we're doing. That's the only way.
You mentioned something I think that's really, really important. And there are some people that have a dream of opening a restaurant, and they hire a bunch of people to do it, and they just put the money into it, and they say, let me know when it's done. And there are some people who take a very different approach and are very much involved and are looking at all of the details. Tell me about your experience when you were opening up the Brothers Sushi. What was your approach into making sure that it was the restaurant you wanted it to be?
So the way that we do the restaurants, a lot of people ask me, they're like, oh, how do you have the restaurants in practice and this and that? Well, the answer to that is very simple. We have a formula and we have a plan. So, I mean, I'm a lawyer, and I have a big practice, and we have a lot of cases, and we have a lot going on. So my time I can't spend on a restaurant. I can't be there all the time. The only thing I can do is go, eat dinner and make sure everything's running smoothly and that it's profitable. That's pretty much the only thing that I do, and it doesn't take that long. And my wife's there to oversee stuff, on the macro side of things. So my approach is, however, I put the time in up front. I want to be super involved. I want to design it. I want to build it. And I want to be there when things are being completed so I can make sure that it turns out exactly how I want it to be. And the reason for that is my dream. I always wanted to have my own restaurant. I never thought I'd have 3 restaurants. And I know there's going to be a couple more coming hopefully in the next couple of years, but I just wanted one. So the first one was extremely important. So my vision for that was I would design the thing. I would be there when it was built. I did a lot of the stuff myself. That knife case you see in the wall, I built that. The patio in the back, I was hands-on with that. And I could send you some pictures later that you could put up. But yeah, I was super involved in the beginning. We get it all done. We get the licenses transferred, the leases are signed, places demoed, built back up, and I do everything. And then I take the key and I hand it to my chef. It was like I mentioned, Mark Akuta, my partner, and I'm out. And then I don't have to spend much time on it ever again, unless something major comes up and then I get involved. But that's like once or twice a year. And that works. It works for us.
You mentioned, being involved in a design, planning, having a formula to do it. I mean, it sounds like it is a lot of hands-on stuff, at least early on. I mean, did you take any trips actually, I think you did take a trip to Japan to pick out what the dishes were going to look like and what you were going to have to serve with, what utensils you were going to use, what knives you were going to have in there. I mean, you really went to immerse yourself in the culture beforehand so you can give a particular type of experience.
Yeah, I did do all that. If you look at Brothers, Santa Monica, and Woodland Hills, they're all clean lines. They're simple and they're all clean lines. I like a lot of wood. I like white, just a lot of brightness. I like darkness on the counters. You could see that the bar, I like hickory and all these different things. And so the plating was important. So I decided I'm going to go to Japan. I'm going to bring Mark with me. We're going to stay there for 4 days. We did this in September of 2018. And I brought samples, pictures and some of the wood that we used for the bar and so on. And I matched it up against the plates. And we spent about 3-4 days there just picking out every single thing from the dessert spoon all the way down to the chopstick, to the soy sauce dish, to the serving plates, to the sashimi, just so, it fit perfect because, I wanted to be proud of it. I wanted people to walk in, sit down and have something put in front of them that was exquisite. And to do that, it took a lot of planning. It did. And I just put the time on it and we knocked it out and it ended up working out. There were the right choices. There were the right matches. So, like I said, attention to detail and putting some time and some care. That's the thing, Tom. Whatever you do, you really got to care about it. You really got to care about it. Like when I do something, I love it more than I love myself. I'm all about it. I will not let it go until it's freaking perfect. And everything that I've done it's been like that. And, I live by that. And that's how some guy, like I call myself some regular Armenian dude from the Valley, was able to do some of these wonderful things. And it's through that outlook.
And really just that commitment to the point where it's almost love. You're loving this process and what you're doing. And I'm a big believer of that. And, I've talked about that. What about some of the challenges? I mean, if we were to look at, starting a brand new business, and a restaurant's not an easy one to start. And obviously you've had success with your firm, but What would you say some of the challenges were in opening up a restaurant, and now even with the second one that you're opening, that maybe you didn't really anticipate, but you definitely had to confront and deal with?
Yeah. So, I mean, you think we deal with personalities in litigation? Come to the restaurant business, my friend. It is a totally, totally different thing. The reason is when we litigate, be it plaintiffs, defense, associates, your firm, somebody else's firm, their staff, whatever, you're working with emails, all these people on the chain and this and that. At the end of the day, we're all working towards one goal, right? We want to get the case resolved, or we just want to get it to trial and get it over with, so we're able to make it happen somehow. The restaurant business isn't like that. Everyone has their own agenda, and that's just what it is. And for me, it was even more difficult because I don't speak Japanese. And most importantly, I didn't know or understand the culture. Now I understand the culture. Now I get it. I get it. And so there is a lot of that. You see some of those cliches on TV where an American guy is going to do business with overseas with somebody who's Japanese, and they learn all the customs, or China, whatever it is, and different countries and stuff. But it's true. Like, you really got to know that. And I learned that. And once I learned that, things started working out a little bit more smoothly, and I began to understand where they're coming from. I mean, the work ethic that are displayed by some of the Japanese chefs and the restaurant people that I met and that I'm in business with now is unparalleled. Like, I have never seen anyone work that hard, and they know what they want. They know their agenda, and you're not gonna change it, even if you're paying for everything in the beginning. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do, and you have to support that and believe in them. That's why you got to be in business and pick the right people. Same thing, like, you got to pick the right lawyer for the right case. I mean, it has to come together. Otherwise, it can be a disaster. And so, I got lucky. I was working with a good dude that I knew for a long time, and we both wanted the same things, and we found a way to make it work. But those were the challenges: personalities, and the culture, and getting to know that, and getting the vendors to sign up with us. In the beginning, they didn't want to give us any credit. We had to pay for everything COD, and throughout the years, we're able to fix all that. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, and then it just in everyday life, in what we do, wherever it is. I mean, being sensitive to people and their differences, their personalities. I mean, that can go a real long way if you really try to find out where they're coming from and get that common ground, so that you can get what it is you need done.
Absolutely. So it all comes down to people, man.
How many times have you heard that, right? It does all come down to people. And you hear about it in school too. Make sure you use the term network. I never understood what that really meant, networking, until later on in life, just building relationships with folks and really getting to know them and realizing that's how the world functions.
That's how it functions, especially for us. I see these younger attorneys and they're like, how do I make it? And that goes back to what I was telling you at the beginning. Define, make it. And I tell them, I'm like, listen, what you see here in my life, it may not be for you. It may not be something that you want to have, because this shit is not easy. It is difficult, especially, what we had to do to, I know your story as well. Look, man, I didn't go home for years after work, 6 p.m., 6:30. I was at CALA events. I was networking. I was meeting referring attorneys. I was trying to get cases. I was, establishing my, our framework that we could get business in, and people didn't know me. And I had some couple verdicts I started hitting here and there, and I was trying to use those. So I wasn't home, kind of like what I was mentioning. And so, I took a long time, established the network. And now, this thing grew into something where, I wasn't planning for this much growth, and I didn't even know how to manage it, to be honest. But thankfully, again, my wife was very supportive. My partner, Matt Wibley, who everyone knows now, we've tried all our cases together. I mean, he's the managing partner here and also the litigator. I mean, he does all my expert depots when I'm not, and I'm engaged in other expert depots. And so we get a lot done at the same time. But I've just been blessed, man. I've just been blessed. And now, after all this work, I get to stay at home when I need to at night, spend time with my family, and take them to my damn restaurant. So it all came to a head. Now, all I'm trying to do, like I was mentioning, is just maintain it all. That's it.
That's the easy part, right?
Well,
I'm kidding. I'm being facetious. The maintenance of it can be just as hard, if not harder. Before, you're not just an all sushi guy, even though you've got this deep love for sushi and Japanese cuisine growing up in Los Angeles. You also are known for your barbecues, and you have been known to smoke one heck of a brisket, and have hosted pop-ups and have worked with other people out there that are bringing barbecue to Los Angeles like we've never seen before. So tell us just a little bit about how you got into the barbecue scene. And I know you even have some background in building smokers and learning how to do that.
So that's again, another long story, but I'll keep it short and give you the gist of it. Again, I had a love for food. And when I talked to a lot of people and I asked them, like, what do you have a love for? Like, oh, running or, hiking, or people have different interests. But for me, mine was food. And because it was food, there was a lot that I could do with it, right? And so if you get success from, settling a case or getting paid on a big verdict or whatever it is, what that does is it allows you to do things and live your dreams and do things that you'd otherwise never even, there would just be a thought, something you think about, fleeting thought on the way home from work one day. So for me, it actually came to fruition. I became serious about it. In the early 2000s, I wanted a good brisket and I wanted to eat some ribs. So I told my wife, I'm like, let's go to Texas. She's like always, she's like, let's go. And 2 days later, we were on a plane. We went to Austin. And at that time, Franklin's Barbecue was doing his thing and it was up and coming and this and that. And I went in there and we had one heck of a meal, man. It was really good. And we drove around Austin and ate all this food and it was fantastic. And so I came back to LA. This was like 2013, I want to say, 2013-ish, 14-ish, something like that. And I wanted to buy a smoker. I was like, oh, I'll buy a smoker and figure out how to do this. I'm sure I could do it. I know how to cook and it'll be great. Man, it took me a year, 14 months to get a smoker. And I got my smoker from Pennsylvania. It's called a Meadow Creek. And the reason why, and I had no ETA, it just showed up. And the reason is Meadow Creek's built by the Amish. So you can't call and be like, oh, where is my smoker? Like, what's the ETA? There's no emails. They don't have a phone. And so the rep that sold me the smoker would drive up there once every 6 months from Ohio to, I don't know, it was like a 5-6 hour drive, get all of the ETAs, bring them back and like email everyone. I was like, you know what? And it was the best smoke. I finally got it. I cooked with it every night for like 6 months. I became pro at it and whatever. And then I wanted to get a bigger one and a smaller one, that I can for different things. And they just wasn't around. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go take welding classes because I was a fabricator after high school. My dad's shop, I was a fabricator. That's, I knew how to do that, but I didn't know how to weld. So in 2015, I took a month off. I went to a welding program in Burbank-ish area. And then I went to I spent about a month or two learning how to weld. Like really, like every day, like 8 hours, like I was there. And I learned I became one hell of a welder. I mean, my welds were really good. And so, and I learned how to weld. Later on, we had a case where a crane broke and I found where the weld failed. And I was able to get their expert to admit that. He didn't know that I knew what had happened. And so some of this stuff we learn is
Amazing.
practical, But anyway,
Amazing.
I learned how to do that. And the guy who taught me, my welding instructor, was a guy named Eric Wesh. And he was into barbecue, but he was more into like Jeeps and beer. And, like he was one of those like, let's make a bumper and this, that. And here I am, I'm making a barbecue. And he was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm making a smoker. He's like, what? And so we made the first smoker. It became the first fat snack. And we became really good friends. And over the course of a year or two, into the end of 2016, I drove down to Paris, California with my wife, and we bought 3 or 4 big 500-gallon propane tanks. And I brought them back. I got a little shop in Sun Valley. We put them in there, and I was going to build a smoker. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I was going to, I knew how to do it. So the next month, I went and bought all the welding equipment. The next month, I did all these things. I bought a crane. I did all these things. And finally, I called Eric. He was still teaching, and he didn't like his job. I'm like, hey, do you want to open a smoker company with me? We're going to build smokers in California, so you don't have to wait 14 months to get it. He's like, maybe. So we sat down over some beers, and, we reached a deal, and we started making smokers. And it took some time from work, but it was okay because I just finished like 3-4 verdicts in a row that year. And I was good to go. And my next trial wasn't for like 3-4 months. And I knew Matt was doing all the depots, and, I check in every night, or I go to the office in the mornings. I'm here every day. Like I can't leave for a second. And I don't want to leave, I love being here. But back then, I was pursuing my dreams. Like I said, it was important to be a part of my happiness and stuff. Anyway, so in 2017, we built the first 500-gallon smoker, and it's named, everyone in the barbecue industry named it Leona. And I got on Instagram for the first time, and I put together just a couple posts about brisket and barbecue. And the first person who started following me and responded was a guy named Bert Bachman. Trudy's Underground Barbecue back then was he hadn't hit quite yet, but he was on his way. And so he's like, come over, let's hang out. So I went over there, we hung out, we smoked some briskets, drank some beer, talked barbecue, etc. And then a couple weeks later, a guy shows up in Bert's backyard, because I started hanging out there, Andrew Munoz, Moose Craft Barbecue. Mm-hmm. And so I have a picture from all 3 of us in 2017. We were just doing backyard barbecues. We had built the first smoker, and we started hanging out almost every day, every other day. People were at their jobs. At the end, we'd go to Bert's house, or we'd go to Andrew's house. It was just, we became a barbecue family. And, our wives got involved, and it just became a beautiful thing. And then we became serious. I'm like, you know what, guys? I remember the Franklin's barbecue line. I'm like, we're going to do the biggest pop-up barbecue ever, like ever. And so we started drinking beer at this place called McLeod's Brewery in Van Nuys. And I made friends with the owner. I'm like, do you want us to bring 2,000 people here for an event? He's like, yes, I do. I still, till today, it's 5 years later, I still till today, I go there, I get free beer, because I do the biggest crowd ever. So I got on Instagram with Trudy's Underground Barbecue, Moose Craft Barbecue. We're doing huge backyard pop-ups, and they were all over social media, Eater LA, like became a big deal. And then I became friends with a guy named Fernando, Racktop Ferns Barbecue in LA. And I brought him in, and we all just started hanging out. And I think it was June or July, I can't remember, of 2017. You were there, I believe. I have pictures of you there.
I was there. To this day, I still say the best brisket I've ever had is the Wagyu, that Snake River Farms Wagyu brisket I had that you made one day at your house.
I remember that
was a great pop up there. My wife and I definitely left stuff.
That was a fundraiser for Vatazarian at my house. That brisket was, as you remember, the biggest pop-up barbecue in California history. We had a line that was 2 hours long, 3 hours long, that's lasted from like 2 p.m. until midnight. And by the time it was over, we were just pooped, you know? And I did that again for Oktoberfest in October of 2017. I did it a second time and it was even bigger. People were driving out because they couldn't find parking for miles. And after I did that, I was like, wow, this is, you know, you get confident. You're like, man, I could do anything. So Fat Stack Smokers was born through the lines. The idea was everyone would get followers, Ragtop. This is how I sold it. Ragtop Firm, Trudy's, Moose, we would all get followers. Everyone wanted to taste their barbecue, and Fat Stack Smokers that we just started would get a name. And because of that pop-up that I put together at McLeod's in the summer of 2017, barbecue in LA was born. It took off. It took off. And, you know, everyone started the restaurants not too long later, or not too long after that. Fat Stack took off. It's booked for, you can't get a smoker now for 2 years, which I don't like because it defeated the purpose of why I started it. But hey, you're busy, you're busy. You know, what can I say? And so these are some of the things that I've done outside of law that are just so wonderful. I mean, it was my dream to see that line, the kind of line that I saw when I went to Franklin's Barbecue in Austin. I was like, you know what? If tomorrow it was over for me, I would be good. Like, you know, like, you're so happy. You're like, oh my God, I did something so great and so huge in an industry that I don't even, you know, it's not what I do. And so once you do that again, and you do it with sushi, you do it with barbecue. I mean, really, Tom, all of us, we could go whatever your dreams are. I mean, you know, somebody was talking to me about they like breeding horses. I'm like, if I wanted to do that, I'm telling you, like, I would make it happen somehow. So, you know, you can make your dream, you can do it. You just gotta really, really, really want it. And people are like, oh, well, how do you do that? That's why all the webinars and the listservs and the lectures and the mixers and this and that. There's only so much you could take from somebody's advice. There's only so much. You can go to all those things for the rest of your life and you're still you're going to be doing the same thing. You just gotta really just, all it comes down to is having some vision, some inspiration, and then just doing it. You really got to want it that bad. That's the trick. Like, that's it. You can go watch, all these great trial lawyers and stuff like that. It's not, all you're doing is getting entertainment. I mean, it's fun to watch them, right? They're funny, they're charismatic. They say good stuff and this and that. And I realized one day, I'm like, I'm not going to sit back and watch people do things and just watch people that are doing what I want to do and just go and see if one day I'm going to get inspired. I'm going to watch once, maybe twice, maybe a third time. And then that's it. I'm never going to go back again. I'm going to go do my own thing and I'm going to do it. And that's all it comes down to. That's it. And so I see the same people asking me the same question year after year after year. And my answer is always the same. Just do it. It's like Nike. It's the best logo, best thing ever. Just do it. That's it. And so that's what I did. And that's how I kind of coming back full scale to what we were talking about. That's how I live my life. And it's worked out for me.
Yeah. I mean, and it's almost, we go full circle when you said that you made a commitment to yourself. I'm going to finish school. I'm going to finish college. I'm going to commit myself to being a trial lawyer. I'm going to commit myself to learning how to weld, because here I'm finding this issue. I want some good barbecue. I want a smoker. There's clearly an issue here with getting smokers to California and throughout the country. I'm going to start this. You helped create the barbecue scene in Los Angeles, and then now sort of reinvigorated, sushi to some degree. I mean, I don't want to say you reinvented it. I mean, that's a big statement, but you've brought a new love to sushi and to a place that may have been missing some of that. Now, with each of these endeavors, have you felt yourself grow more and more confident in your ability to apply yourself and just say, I have this vision, I'm gonna do it, and it's gonna happen?
I think what it did, these things, and all these cases that we've tried, yeah, obviously you get more confident. Now, if you told me I'm going to open a restaurant next week, I'd be like, okay, it's no problem. So it's not as intimidating as it used to be. But what all this did for me, in our 30s and in our 20s, we're, for me, so emotionally immature. Just very smart. I'm more street smart than I am academic. Now I have both, which makes me kind of dangerous, when we litigate. I know what they're doing. They can't, out dirty me, because I know what they're doing. I know what's going on. So we knew all that, but what we didn't know is emotional intelligence. I didn't know that was even a thing. Like I had no idea. So interacting with all these different people through so many different mediums, through food, through law, through, construction, real estate. I mean, you name it. I've done a lot of the working out, the gym, and this and that. And, now we're in Calabasas. We're part of the community, the whole community. It teaches you, it gets you out of your bubble, and it teaches you how to be. And like I said in the beginning, it's a fork in the road. You could either choose happiness, or you could choose to be, negative and take issue with everything. And so over the course of this experience in the last 15 years and working in all these different industries, it really groomed me. It really groomed my emotional intelligence to where something that used to, I call it the radar test. So, the submarines, they have the radar. So my world is literally that round thing. And, you have the little dial that goes around. That thing used to pop off in my 30s all the time. Everything was, this, that, I was like, so just 5,000 RPM all the time. And, the armor was up and I was just, they would always just pop off this, that. And so now, barely, like it'll pick something up here and there. And it only picks up things that if they are not addressed, they will be a permanent issue, or they will last longer than 6 months. And if it doesn't meet that criterion, I now know through emotional wisdom that it's not worth, if it's a person, a place, or thing, or whatever happened somewhere, somebody said or did, I now know what to spend emotional energy on and what to just let go, and it'll resolve on its own. Most of the time, if, the motto is do nothing. If you do nothing, you'll be all right. It's when you do something that doesn't require any action, when you make it worse. And, I used to do a lot of that, but now my answer to you is I've grown tremendously. This is what I've learned. And I'm much happier over it. And I've come through with a lot of experiences in my life. And I'm better for it. I mean, I've seen a lot and I've done a lot. And so, I know more now, much more.
That's amazing that through all of this, success, and I think you can call it that. I think that's fair. Being able to do all these things, this amazing byproduct of emotional intelligence and growth, personal growth, develops from that, from doing those kind of things and really just trying to live out your dreams. You can have all sorts of amazing beneficial effects to your life, make you a better human, a better husband, a better father to, two, beautiful daughters, and just a better overall person to work with on a team, or to supervise others that are doing it. So,
Absolutely.
that's really just a testament to the work and the love that you put into it. What just a great lesson, or just a great takeaway from you, Steve. Let me ask, just turning back to just the industry itself. Here we are, we're in 2022. Do you see or have a vision for where food is going in LA, or how it may change in the future, or what we can expect?
So, I'm gonna take a step back from the restaurant industry thing, because we just bought Shibuya in Calabasas, and that's changing hands here in about 30 days. And that's also a big responsibility. And we have, I could tell you like I was telling you when we first got on, trials are opening back up. I mean, they're coming and they're there and jurors are ready and it's going to be great. So I'm going to focus all my attention on that. However, Saturday night, you will find me dining, at some of the best places that I could find, not necessarily expensive, but so that's kind of what I want to do. And so in order to do that, I'm looking to go to the best possible places I can on Saturday, be it somebody's house, a pop-up and this and that. And I've learned through watching this for the last couple years, people are taking food much more seriously. They're willing to spend much more money on it. They will travel a greater distance for it. They care about it more. The ingredients are being respected much more. They're being sourced from faraway places. They're being cared for. We're doing at Brothers, we're doing dry aged fish. That's kind of become a big thing. And if you go to Santa Monica Brothers, I have aging refrigerators in the back. This is how they used to do it. And what it does is it dissipates all the water content of the protein and breaks it down to give it a much more concentrated flavor. And so what the direction I've seen it is people are focused on bringing back old school methods of how food used to be that kind of dissipated when it got, corporations took over and this and that. They're bringing it all back now because it takes a lot more time. It's much more expensive. And I see the demand for it just skyrocketing. So we're going to be eating some really good stuff in the next few years coming. Like we're going to be having, things are popping up all over. And if you look at Eater LA, or these other websites and stuff like that are known for food evaluation, just keep your eye on those. And there are things that are blow you away, there's a restaurant my wife and I recently went to called Horses on Sunset, Armenian chef. I mean, he's doing stuff over there that I haven't tasted since my grandma was alive, like in the 80s and stuff. So they're bringing back these methods of cooking and they're adding a modern twist onto it. It's fantastic. So we're in for a treat, Tom. Really, LA is going to be, it's a wonderful food scene, but it's going to be even better because people are constantly trying to outdo each other, kind of like litigation.
Yeah.
Now trials are opening up. Everyone's trying to get the next biggest verdict. I've been guilty of that. So I know, now I don't care so much. I'm going to try whatever I have. But that's kind of what food's doing now, and it's fun to watch to see who's going to do what. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I always like a good meal. It doesn't matter if it's a mom and pop shop, hole in the wall, or if it's a fancy place, as long as they're putting out good food, good people. I love that. I never miss an opportunity if I can get to go out. And Horses, I have had the food there, and it is remarkable. So looking forward to some new restaurants out there, and hopefully you and I'll get a chance to dine soon. But I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast today and just sharing with us all of the things that you've been through and just giving us sort of a glimpse into all of the effort that it takes to do these different things and some of the lessons and challenges that you've learned along the way. So I really appreciate it, Steve.
My pleasure, man. Anytime. Thanks, Tom.
You got it.
Take care.